Okay, additional comments? Either for or against, please come up, ma'am, and restate your name, even though we heard from you before.
Lois Pritchett, 2970 Highway 80s. I just kind of have a question, not for or against. That swale along the highway, there will be heavy traffic coming out, if it's Nottingham, that extends down, and I wouldn't be surprised if many from Ridgeview 1 take Wild Rose and come out there because of the dangerous intersection that they talked about where they come out now on Ridgeview 1, and because this will have turning lane. But how far back is all that, so when you come down you have a really clear view with, he was talking about the trees and stuff like Travois Way. I was just wondering, are we back enough with all that that you really have a clear pull-out? Because I'd be pulling out there too.
That'd be a question for Michael Ray. Mike, you want to answer that, please?
Well, as it's proposed, the 8-foot pathway would end up being about this southern line right here. And so this would essentially be the north side of State Highway 8. So you'd have the existing drainage ditch, which wouldn't be affected by this development. So you can see that right here. And so between, you have the 8-foot wide pathway, and then you have the berms for the linear stormwater swale. So basically you would have this distance to view oncoming traffic, and I think it's probably 40 feet, but I can't read that number on this.
Your foliage is not built right up to the pavement. Is that what you're saying?
The start of the linear stormwater swale isn't going to occur until basically this line right here. There'll be the 8-foot wide pathway, which would run along the southern boundary of that linear stormwater swale. And so just for your reference, this is the northern portion of State Highway 8, this line right here. Then you have the existing stormwater ditch going right here. So basically it's 27 feet.
From the intersection of Highway 8.
Yeah, it's about 30 feet from the pavement on Highway 8 to where the stormwater swale would be right there. So you have, car length, probably 3-4 car lengths there.
You have a question for Mike on this?
Yeah, I do.
Because I want to continue with the public hearing.
Well, just
comments.
same subject, Mike, is what about line of sight to the left?
Towards Troy, you talking about, Wayne?
Yep. To the east.
Well, you'd have no plantings over there. You'd essentially have the sidewalk, which comes down Notting Hill and terminates right there. So you'd have all this area, which is relatively flat on that portion of the lot.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'll take additional testimony, general comments, or those that are against this.
Don Regan, 1810 Lorraine Lane. And my question, I guess, is, does the council have the ability, or can the city put in a condition in a plat where the developer is required to return the topsoil to the lots after they blade it off?
That's a good question. I have no idea. Bill, do you want to address that?
Currently, the city does not have a development standard that requires topsoil placement on residential lots within the city. If the council wished to modify the development standards to require a minimum depth of topsoil, that would be probably the recommended approach. It may not have any relationship to how much may exist on the site, but if there was a desired minimum depth of topsoil, the council could certainly consider imposing that as a development standard for new subdivisions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to impose that tonight because it's not with any warning, but that can be considered, because I know several people here have been out to see our lot and how when the topsoil is retained, how amazing the trees and shrubs grow, and it becomes a mature neighborhood quite quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Okay. Additional comments? Either against or general?
General, pretty much question. Victoria Seaver, 121 North Lilly. I don't have a pony in this horse race here, but I was at the planning and zoning meeting when this went on for quite a while. And from what Mr. Thompson said, are you still considering putting an actual sidewalk across those two in the other development, the where your timber? The what?
The turnarounds?
Yeah, the turnarounds, sorry. Are you still planning on putting a sidewalk across
That
those?
was one of the proposals, one of the recommendations.
And that
Is
Mr.
that-
Thompson doesn't want to do. As I recall, in the planning and zoning meeting, the thought was to just put in the curb cuts and not put elevated sidewalks across that, and it had something to do with the way you direct water when you have that sidewalk put across there that causes some kind of runoff heading down the hill. I'm just bringing it up because I was at that meeting, and that was a consideration there, and your staff people should be able to respond to that. The only thing my concern would be some kind of erosion or water problem that might come out of that.
Thank you.
And I'm
Mike,
just
you want to
bringing it
address that?
Well, I don't recall any erosion or water problem, but it was Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation, like I had mentioned before, that the curbing and sidewalk just be extended from the eastern boundary of the cul-de-sac instead of staff's recommendation of extending sidewalk and curbing from that western portion across the temporary cul-de-sac and then basically tying in with the proposed subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Continued comments, either against or general comments for this preliminary plat hearing? Seeing no more, I will close it.
Excuse me, Your Honor, do you intend on taking rebuttal from the applicant?
Sorry, Susan, come on up.
Will you reopen the public hearing?
Reopen it
Thank you, sir.
for rebuttal, and then we'll close it. Sorry about the confusion,
No,
folks.
that's okay. I'll try to make it quick. I wanted to address Bill Park's concerns. Obviously, we want this to be a safe park. We believe that Parks and Rec Department wouldn't recommend approval if it weren't a safe park, and I certainly don't necessarily want to compare Moscow to the Bronx. But I also want you to consider, we had somebody come up, one of the neighbors for the first time at Planning and Zoning came up and comment about that he was concerned about the safety from a traffic standpoint of where the parkland is now, and hopefully it made it clear when we explained that the Highway 8 was going to be 50 or 60 feet away, and then of course at the end of the cul-de-sac it's hard to envision what traffic issues you may have. But you can also parallel that with the safety concerns that Bill Parks brought up, and that if we put it out there where there's lots of traffic, then you have the other side of the realm who's concerned about the safety issues of having heavy traffic right next to a parkland. So in some cases we're just not going to make everybody happy, but it's not necessarily that we completely ignore those issues. Obviously Thompson's want a safe park, and we believe that this will in fact probably be a safe park. You guys kind of mentioned it with Mr. Harrow. There's nothing that say that Thompsons don't have a dog in this fight, because the city's requiring Notting Hill to go through. And then in regards to, I think it was Victoria and the curb cut, the temporary cul-de-sac, just a little bit of background more on the planning and zoning and where they came from. I mean, there was two issues. One of them was primarily that they didn't believe that the developer should be required to be the one to put that in, regardless of whether the city decides to do it in the future or not. And that was actually the initial motion, and then Garrett, piped up and said he would be willing to take care of that one segment, what we thought 6 to 8 feet or whatever it is, so that you could have the gradual pedestrian pathways going in to keep the temporary cul-de-sacs in an even keel. And we did have one of the neighbors come up and provide testimony to say that, yeah, they want to keep it open, in particular the one on Wild Rose that all the neighborhood and the community comes to play basketball and stuff. So they expressed an interest and desire of maintaining those as they are. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Susan. Well, you got a question?
Well, a question, if I may, for Kevin Lilly on the cul-de-sac curb and sidewalk question.
I think I know his question.
And I don't know whether you've been involved in this, but it's an engineering question. Is there a drainage problem if those current turnarounds are not curbed or sidewalked across? And is there any engineering issue, pro or con?
If you would leave the pavement in place?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would really depend on where are there catch basins in those sectors of the circle?
They're not.
There aren't.
But they don't puddle, they just puddle where the sewer line is sunk a little bit out in the middle of the street.
It would totally depend on the aspect of the cul-de-sac, of the temporary cul-de-sac. It's either going to drain, it's going to go somewhere. What's going to fall there is not going to get out, so it should probably be provided for.
If there hasn't been a problem in the last 25 years, what's being proposed now would not make it worse. Is that correct?
If you presume that the curb, that it is it curb and gutter, or either just a vertical curb or rolled curb?
It's a vertical curb along the backside of both of them.
Okay, and right now it's draining down the hill towards the west?
Yes.
Depends on at what point you would depress the walk. If you depress the walk where the existing radius comes around, I would imagine you can make it flow out and continue to flow out. If you depress the walk for that drop, you could put a drop in it so that it would continue around the circle and down the road. You know what I'm saying?
Are you saying that if you put a sidewalk across there, you could create a problem?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Done.
Done.
Public hearing is closed. John?
Since we've been talking about the property to the east, couple things. If the people that live on these cul-de-sacs are willing to let them be, in fact they like them, I'm inclined to agree with them. But even more so, I don't think that it is right for this body to make a developer fix a possible perceived problem that is put on somebody else's property 25 years ago. I think that Mr. Thompson said at the Planning and Zoning meeting that he would be more than willing to make sure that the curb and gutter on the south side were to go to the edge of the cul-de-sac on the, what would be the eastern edge of the cul-de-sac, and that is being done in somebody else's property, and if the problem is being fixed, he's fixing a problem on someone else's property that he did not create. I don't think that, and I can't support having him put in curb and gutter all the way across that. So, as that's one of the conditions that the city staff recommended, I think we've got to take that out.